Yeah, the capacity is there. Look at this. Really driving that point home again. Look at that, almost kind of looks like ants. I mean, this is quite reminiscent of actual footage. Oh yeah, I know that one is for sure based on a real photo. The Saigon execution, look at it. Polluting. Oh. The rich and famous, and the disenfranchised. Okay. Official confirmation. The fictional element. Better off dead, eh? The connotations of this. It's time for poof, huh? You don't say. I mean, it's quite a scathing appraisal of humanity, right? The destructive nature of humanity, the dark side of humanity, as the late chairman actually alluded to, right? Oh God. Oh, is he gonna fall out? This is the end, poof. Yeah, he knows. He understands, right? He feels it. Still hiding it. How long does he have, man? Can't be much longer. Oh, for a second I thought he's actually falling over, like tripping over. You know, maybe his... Let's save that for later. The second blast of N. Final. I've seen that before. Look at this. Meruem the Enlightened. He's essentially a god at this point. Oh, I love the presentation of this. Ooh, Welfin. Oh. Before I could even finish. Whoa. He's not lying about that aspect of it. Makes a bit of truth in there. It took him out before Welfin could take him out. He's like a little fly. Oh, in comes FILMBuFF. Look at this. The stage is set. For a three-hander, look at this. Something close to that. Right, he does know quite a bit, doesn't he? Is Meruem going to allow that though? Nope. Look at that. That's similar to Poof's thing, isn't it? Oh yeah, he's a godlike figure at this point. Yeah. Spiritual message, but again, improved. He's got mastery of it. Yeah, but look at the roses surrounding him. How's that for visual storytelling? More roses. Oh.
やや恐怖が勝っているが、波のように寄せる世への強い殺意は隠しようもない。
But knowing the new Medwim,
貴様の世への憎悪、その根源に少々興味がある。
his best bet is just to be honest.
申してみよ。
Yeah.
偽りは許さぬ。ありのままを。
メルエム様、手順違いにございます。
That's quite the yeah, quite the choice there, Poof. Almost giving him an order. It is essentially an order. It's not a request or anything.
私の秘密に深く関わるもの。しかしそれを自覚せぬもの。
Yeah, he made him call Pito.
図らずもそのものの口から私の秘め事の一部。 もしくは全てが漏れることも十分ありえまする。
Okay, okay.
王の能力を前にして嘘は無力ならば真実だ。いろいろいっぺんに起きてジャイロのことを思い出して
memories of someone he
ヒロイズムに酔っちまった。
right.
ジャイロの仇討ちみてえな気分になってジャイロは死んじゃいねえのにきっと生きてるのにあのタコのせいだ。あいつが俺のペースを狂わせやがった。
By introducing emotions or throwing them, okay. Use some of that overthinking nature of yours. Oh. No. No. Is this how it's going to happen? I mean, it's there. He has that information. And almost making demands? Direct order. Oof. He is. If you give him that much, he's open to dialogue.
絶対的振幅を知りつつなおまがまがしく明瞭に発せられる殺意にまみれたオーラは是非にかかわらずその答えが王の意にそぐわぬ場合死をもって償うほかないことを示していた忠義も敵意も王の前では皆平等に向かち
Wow. Similar to Netero. He is enlightened. He is a godlike figure at this point. Those things are meaningless.
私はあの時すでに
I remember that. So he's still prepared to die?
順次よ己の忠義に何も申し上げるわけには参りません
That's all there is to it?
勝負の途中ゆえ
Oh.
ただそれだけのこと
He's gonna pat his head because he.
常軌を逸する決意狂気が
Wow. Because he understands. He can just feel it, right? Chills.
腹が減ったな。
しかし
Back to.
ウェルフィンは即座に理解した
俺はくれてしまう
Not again, Zykel.
およそ1秒先自身の未来を知ったウェルフィンの風貌は一瞬にして100年余りが過ぎたかのごとく
Just like Nav.
生きたい
That's the difference, though. Latch on to that.
その間脳裏では過去の一切が高速で雑然と流れ
The monks are back.
弾け散り現在と混ざり合った
一言最初の
Oh my god, it's gonna be Welfin.
生への執着と不可避の 使徒の教会で
一言メッセージ王殿一言
Oh, I love this.
一言プフの秘密一言
Poof secret.
俺は一言死ぬまでは知らね
かつてなく目まぐるしく働いた脳細胞が導き出したのは通常であれば選択し得ないものだった。
He's gonna say it. Ah. Oh, look at this. Oh. Ah. Let there be light. Let there be color. Wow. It's paradise. Look at it. The warmth. As far as the eye can see. Ah, the light that illuminates Meruem. Oh, right. Now he truly gets to feel it. Because of that connection. Now do you get it, Poof? This is how much he treasures her. Loves her.
これがその方の
はい。恐れた以上に彼女
Wow, that was incredible.
はなりと処罰を
He's not. Ah,
言わずとも伝わっておろう。
he understands
我らは痛い同心。咎などない。
that that was punishment enough
叶う
for
はず
Poof.
などない
Yeah.
捕らえた2名が何か知っているかもしれん。聞き出せたら解放してやる。そやつらに聞きたいことはもうない。
This is like a dagger to Poof's heart.
開いた扉。奥へ続く足跡。
That might be one of the most beautiful depictions of love I've seen in recent memory.
すべてが一つの解を指している。ウェルフィン。
Wow, it was Relfin.
小麦は地下格納庫のどこかに女とタコと共にいる。お主はそれを余か護衛軍に知らせる役。
Oh, the score.
なぜそれを
お主が役目を引き受けた理由の鍵はタコにありそうだが、役目を全うしなかった理由はまた別。それは世への憎悪の根源に起因するか。
He legitimately just wants to know. He wants to understand.
どうしか安心せ。答えた後はどこへ行こうとお主の自由。
Meruem the Merciful, the Benevolent.
礼を言う。お主のおかげで大切なものを思い出せた。
Meruem the Compassionate.
奴らは D エリアのビゼフ指定で待つと
Wow, look at him, man.
俺の王はジャイロただ一人貴様は貴様らは敵だ俺たちだ
Wow. I think he'll respect that, actually.
さようか。
The courage that...
会えるといいな。そのものと、そして可能なる人として生きるがよい。
That's it. That's a dagger to the heart.
かつてネテロは王は人とアリとの間で揺れているとカンパした。だが今や
Wow. Wow. That's an incredible episode. Perhaps the most important of the Chimera Ant arc. Okay, so let's kind of build on this episode and kind of continue my thoughts. Right from the conclusion there, you know, I really do believe this is an important episode of the Chimera Ant arc. And like I said, I believe it might be, it really could be the most important, right? If not at least one of the most important episodes of the arc. I mean, I think that much is clear. It really is quite clear. You know, once it's all said and done, you know, once I kind of look back at this arc, And listen, I've seen some incredible things, incredible episodes. I mean, all-timer episodes, right? The type of stuff I'll never forget. You've got your episode, 111s, 116s, 126, 128, 131, and a bunch of other ones in the middle as well. Staggering things take place in some of these episodes, right? And rightfully so, they are considered almost immediately some of the best, right? I mean, by the time I got to the ending for all of them, I knew I'm looking at something. I just sat through something quite incredible. But this episode right here, my God, I really felt like it truly just kind of encapsulates everything about this arc up until this point, right? It really felt like the bread and butter, the meat and potatoes of this arc. Let's really truly get down to business here, because it really truly is the business end of the arc now. And I suspect that that's probably the last time I'll see FILMBuFF, right? Or at the least, it's the final time I'll see him actually try anything, because by the end of it, it's pretty definitive, right? It's pretty definitive that he's just gone through a monumental reality check. His entire perspective, his entire goal, his motive, it's been crushed, right? But I'm not looking at it just as, FILMBuFF, everything he fought for, it ends like this. There's other elements to this. There's quite a bit of nuance there. And as someone who's enjoyed FILMBuFF quite a bit, I'm going to give him that respect as a character, one of the standout characters of this arc. And I am going to explore, some of the different intricacies of his breakdown in this moment, right? Step by step, as he finally comes to understand that, this whole time, his entire motive is built on an idea of a king that simply does not exist, that cannot exist, that was never going to exist. He finally sees it, right? He understands that he never had a chance. And of course, this is because he was given the opportunity, the incredible experience of actually sharing that experience of the king, remembering Komugi, in one of the most incredible scenes of the entire anime, I'd say. Like I said, to me, it felt like one of the most beautiful depictions, one of the most unique depictions of love that I've seen in recent memory in media, love and its depiction, be it in the visual format, through dialogue. There's quite a bit of that out there. So to see Togashi's take on it here in this specific example, these beings that are linked forever, Komugi and King Meruem, or let's just say Meruem, right? Because you see, by the end of it, the title of king is something he's kind of given up, right? The responsibility of that, it's not on his shoulders. He doesn't carry it on his shoulders anymore. It's quite the stark contrast if you go back to episode 126 and the lecture that he had for our late chairman, right? If you'll remember, I called it quite naive, but again, let's be honest, let's be fair. That's all he knows, right? And he did not know enough. He didn't even scratch the surface in terms of understanding human nature. And hell, you see Togashi doubles down and goes in again. Like I said, a scathing appraisal of human nature, rightfully so. All of that felt too real, right? Because it is. Most of it is essentially taken from real life examples, right? Or kind of remodeled to depict real life. All of that. None of that is fictional, right? Maybe, of course, some of the elements of the miniature Rose, as kind of expected in the last episode, or speculated rather, there might be some fictional elements given the expedited, rate and the nature of, this bleeding and, again, Yuppie dying. And then surprisingly, I actually got some more on Yuppie, right? The off-screen death that happened. And it's, it's just as tough to see his final moments, right? In the end, this is a point I made in the last episode, but in the end, he's this squirming fly that all of us have seen, right? On the floor, sometimes you'll see a fly just laying there and just on its last legs, just kind of squirming a bit. That Yuppie is reduced to that, right? I mean, of course, it's really quite deliberate. It's as deliberate as it gets, depicting him in that manner, right? A bug, right? A crushed bug at that. Not even close to the peak of his powers anymore, reduced to this. And the crazy thing is, I actually thought Poof might be, falling out of the sky really early on in that episode. Again, based on the composition and the framing of that shot, him in the background and Meruem beginning to understand, okay, something's off here about Poof. By the end of this episode, you really clearly understand that Meruem always knows. He's always known, right? Since his rebirth. He feels it all. He has a true understanding of it all, right? Yet, on multiple occasions, he lets Poof live. Yet that alone is also another type of punishment, right? Because, if you look at it from Poof's perspective, it's this final nail in the coffin, right? He couldn't even get the death that he wanted, right? From the king executing him for his transgressions and all of that, right? At least then maybe, he might have thought, okay, there's a semblance of that, kingly nature about him. A bit of that is in there still, that he can execute me, right? For, again, going against him. But no. And, this thing, I felt that, at that point, it's clear that, Meruem is not going to kill him. Hell, I even thought he's going to put his hand on his head at one point, right? Because Meruem completely understood that, Poof, his loyalty, even if it is, misguided, or, his motives or his goals or his, vision of the king, the one true king, maybe it's not, entirely realistic, perhaps. Meruem understood that, okay, he means good. This comes from a place of absolute royalty. I did it again. Loyalty, right? On multiple occasions, he understands. At the most basic level, Poof means good, right? Poof is here for the Chimera Ants. He's here for the king, looking out for the king and the vision of the Chimera Ant king. But yeah, him not executing Poof is, again, another form of punishment. No, I'm not saying, that Meruem is actively thinking along those lines, but I'm saying that as an audience member, right? Looking at it from Poof's perspective. He couldn't even get that execution, right? He couldn't even get that semblance of, I don't know, ease, right? That, okay, at least there's that. The king still has that in him to execute me for this, for going against him, right? And he straight up asked for it. Punish me. Please punish me for my actions. And he's ready to accept it, as he was all that time ago. Yeah, a little flashback to Komugi as he reaches out to her. The crazy thing is, you go back to those episodes, you think about those moments of him almost being on the brink of using spiritual message on his king before the dragon dive, before the attack on the palace. The crazy thing is, he would have come to this conclusion back then, right? Maybe it was a bit more hazy back then for the king, but he was on that path already in terms of, Komugi meaning that much to him, right? And here he was given the privilege of actually experiencing that, right? It's essentially the same type of approach as Pito, coming through that entrance post Dragon Dive, right, in episode 112, and seeing the king, right, caring for Komugi in that manner, and understanding that, okay, this is a person that means that much to him. He treasures Komugi that much, right? And you see, Pito's empathetic nature really comes out there. And of course, the subsequent request of Pito, right? Not in order, but a request. It goes straight to Pito's heart, doesn't it? That request and just the approach of the king in that moment. And from that point on, everything changed. Her perception of Komugi and her relation to her king changed. Poof got that through this. And like I said, maybe I should go back and finish up my point. Listen, to me, it felt like this is straight from the heart, straight from Togashi's heart. To me, this felt like a depiction of the love, the warmth he feels, the connection he feels with perhaps his partner, his wife, right? The creator of Sailor Moon. You'll have to excuse me, I cannot remember her name. So once again, excuse me on that. But, perhaps it's, his idea of that, right? Maybe it could be his children, right? If they have children. I'm just kind of assuming they have children together. Maybe this is the love he feels for his children and his wife, all of that, right? To me, it really truly feels like that was from the heart, that incredible, beautiful depiction of love. One word, And the memories of that one treasured person just lit up Meruem's world, full of color, the warmth of the sun, the light that's illuminating it all, right? The paradise he finds himself in. My God, it's yeah. I'm really thinking about Poof in that moment. Finally, really, truly getting to understand that, he actually must have felt so much guilt in that moment as well, right? That he kept his king from this person that means this much to him, right? He must have felt so much guilt in that moment as well, alongside, other emotions, of course, but guilt must have been one of those, right? This king that he cares for so much from his heart, right? He deprived him of, his beloved Komugi, his beloved person. And it is a depiction of love, that much is clear. And you see that this love is made up of stuff of dreams, isn't it? And all the most beautiful things he could fathom at that moment. It's an incredible scene, right? Just the memory of someone. And listen, Welfin can, sorry, I almost said agree. He can relate. He can relate. Yes, he didn't experience it alongside Poof. But Welfin had a similar moment just episodes ago, remembering Gyro. And then, much more recently, that memory of Gyro is driving him, right? So much so that he, at one point, he's almost kind of annoyed that, the octopus, Ikalgo, brought that up, muddled up his emotions and all of that. But, that's how strong emotions are, or memories are. The memory of a really special person, his person. And listen, it doesn't have to be romantic love, but there is unconditional love there, right? Gyro and Welfin, or Zykal rather. Again, going back to that backstory I got back in episode 123, right? Someone he considers his little brother, someone who saved him, essentially. So yeah, a lot of these people can relate. Hell, you go back to episode 128, another incredible episode, the rebirth of Meruem, and the bonding experiences that, both Yuppie and Poof had. Poof's been there. He's had something like this before, right? And he gets the chance to experience it one more time before his imminent death. Because at this point, the ticking time bomb plot device is in full flow, right? Especially, once I get official confirmation in the opening of the episode, right? That montage, oof, damning stuff. But then, you see the ending of that episode, right? Through Meruem, right? Through Meruem and his compassionate, forgiving, merciful approach, you see, the other side of humanity as well, of human nature, right? The kind side of human nature. But then also, going back to the final moments, the narrator bringing up the chairman's thought process from all that time ago, right? Episode 122, I believe. Yes, of course, the clear indication here, the clear goal here of the writing is to, of course, without actually spelling it out, even though it does spell it out, that yes, this is his human side, right? This is the humanity within Meruem really, shining through, right? But, I think it's a bit of a disservice to just kind of, I don't know, break it down just to that. I mean, sure, that's certainly on display, right? Throughout that episode even, right up until the end of it, right? The ant side, the human side, of course, he's both of that. And human side is shining through, no doubt about it. But I think he's even beyond that. Like I said, throughout the episode, I felt like he's become this godlike figure, right? Enlightened figure at this point. I don't think that's a stretch to claim at this point, is it? So, I think it's even beyond human nature and chimera ant nature. This is now a special being that has been reborn. And, since his rebirth, things have been quite different, right? His approach has been a little bit different. His temperament has been different. At the most basic level, you see that he really appreciates the truth, right? Sincerity. Just give me a sincere response, a sincere answer, right? He's open to dialogue. And, listen, Welfin doesn't know any of this, right? Welfin's actually really up against it in this episode, right? Because he doesn't have information that Poof has and us, the audience, has, right? So, Welfin actually, the things he pulls off in this episode, against the ropes under the most immense pressure that he's ever going to face in his life, to the point that he's aged something like 100 years, right? Not literally, but, you look at his face, my God, he looks like a pug, like a bulldog, a pit bull. all of his fur just gone in an instant, right? You see the wrinkles all over his face. But, this isn't from being exposed to the aura. This is more so about, him understanding at that point he's about to die, right? And then him not giving up, right? The difference there is that, of course, Poof has accepted that. Yeah, I'll accept my death. I've always accepted my death. But, Welfin, he fought for it. He didn't give up. That takes courage, right? And, this whole idea of, Welfin the overthinker, and, him being this overthinker to the point that it's almost paralysis, choice paralysis at times, right? That's how he's established earlier on. He's always thinking of every single possibility to the point that sometimes he can't even trust himself or his ability and all of that, right? But you see that here in this situation, the situation of all situations, all of that setup comes in so clutch. That approach comes in so clutch because under pressure, he's able to think of all of the possibilities, right? He's all there. I mean, yes, the narrator does specify that, because of just the nature of the situation and the immense pressure that he's under, he's essentially performing at his peak, right? And, that is usually the case sometimes, isn't it? Under really dangerous situations or life and death situations, people can kind of tap into their complete potential, right? Absolute use of their brain power, according to the narrator in Welfin's case, right? Firing, overdrive, and all of that. And the thing is, I love it. I love it that it's Welfin, right? Not because it's Welfin specifically, but that it's just a side character, right? A supporting cast member, a Chimera ant at the end of the day. I mean, the three-hander is between three Chimera ants. Yes, there's also the internal, struggles and pull of, human nature, Chimera ant nature. But you see that it's three Chimera ants here at the end of days, I suppose. And by that I mean just close to the end of the arc. And I suppose, yeah, there's only really one more thing left at this point, right? I mean, maybe a few more things before he does get to see Komugi. It feels imminent, doesn't it? The reunion is upon us, hopefully. But there's some things that still need to be discussed in terms of a potential reunion. I mean, you're not going to go through all of that to not have them meet. So I'm pretty certain at this point, I'd say 99% sure that they are going to meet again, right? And I am going to get that scene that I keep visualizing so much, right? Him getting to share his name. Yeah, oh my God, I just got chills just even thinking about that. But before it can get to that point, he'll have to come across maybe Ikalgo, maybe Palm, right? It's not going to be just a straight dash to Komugi or anything. But even then, there's the connotations of the poison, the contagion within the body of the king, right? And this poison, the prick of the rose, if you will, it's meant to be quite potent. And it's supposed to destroy your organs from the inside, massive internal hemorrhaging and internal bleeding and all that. So at this point, it's clear that, it's essentially the king's body, Meruem's body, right? Because again, he's built really quite different. That's the only reason he's able to kind of stay in the game as long as he has at this point. But, at this point, of course, the king understands that this is it. His time here is limited. And, to me, it's clear that in his final moments, he feels that in his final moments, there's only one thing he really wants to do. And at this point, the path is clear, almost clear, right? Spend it with his person, and that is Komugi. Now, again, the question of Komugi potentially being a danger, being in such close proximity, possibly to the king, that's another point you simply have to think about, right? I brought up Knuckle and Melioron. Have they been affected because of their proximity to, again, all three of them? But I do want to go back to that scene, once Welfin does arrive at that conclusion, the one word. Now, to be honest, I kind of have to remember my own point. Welfin doesn't have all the information that I have, so he could have said more than a word, right? He could have said, I know about Komugi, or again, I suppose you can call it a nitpick, but I'm just saying, it didn't really truly have to be just one word, but you do have to look at it from his perspective. Welfin really truly must have felt that I have one chance at this. And I'll come back to the internal struggle he feels at that point, right? The visual depiction of it all, right? The stress that he's under. My God, that's another standout of this episode. But I do want to go back and focus on the depiction of Meruem getting back those memories, right? The blanks being filled, and the moment that emptiness, that hollowness gets filled, you see that Meruem feels complete. He feels whole. I don't know, her name alone evokes such bliss within him, right? And that's the thing that must have hurt Poof so much, but also at the same time induced so much guilt. And you see that it left him a broken man, a man without a motive, a plan, a goal at this point in time. So that did kind of feel like the ending of Poof's arc as well. But I'm not really going to truly sign off on Poof just yet, because I don't know yet if that is the final action of Poof's life or final, moments of his life. But like I said earlier, I do feel that that might be the last of Poof, right? Truly be the last of the Poof I knew, right? In how he functions. And you see that ultimately he did it to himself as well. You kind of look back at Poof's approach, over the span of the past few episodes, manipulative, deceptive, he's scheming. It bit him in the ass because he's the one and only reason that Welfin actually even knew about Komugi in the first place, right? And because of that information, and there's quite a bit of information for someone as careful and someone who's a critical thinker such as Welfin, there is quite a bit of information there. So he had that information. The whole idea, though, is to land on that option, that choice, right? And he gets there. He gets there in the end, right? He knew that, okay, this is something that, Shawa Poof is lying about to Neferpito, right? He wants him to lie to Neferpito on his behalf through that phone call, and then he fakes it as well, right? And indeed, he does say the name Komugi then, right? Back in episode 130, I believe. But yeah, let me circle back once again to Meruem regaining his memories about Komugi and the depiction of it. It deserves a bit of spotlight again. Yeah, it's just, you see, it's roses, the nice kind in this case, it's butterflies, it's art, right? To me, they really truly kind of felt like the sun and the moon, Komugi and Meruem. You see the stars, the cosmos, everything, all those things. Like I said, it's the stuff dreams are made of. That's how he associates with the memory of Komugi, eh? And of course, in that paradise, in that, Eden, it's them playing gungi, right? Sharing those moments together. And, that still has me thinking about any potential reunion. I mean, I say potential, but, I'd say it's pretty locked in at this point. Especially, given the incredible character development of Meruem and coming back to Komugi in this state. And at the end of the day, it comes full circle because it is Komugi, a human, a special human at that kind of kicked it all off, that initial identity crisis. So it's, surely it's about to come full circle. And yeah, going back to Poof, also getting to experience that, he understands that he never had a chance, right? He kind of goes through something similar to Gon in episode 130. Yeah, that episode's coming up quite a bit already. Again, right before episode 131. Yeah, he sees that it was never in his hands. Poof finally understands that all of this, he's been, operating under false assumptions of the king. And like I said earlier, it's a king that never existed or could ever exist, right? This is Meruem. And of course, that right there is enough of a dagger to Poof's heart, isn't it? To see just how much this human means to him, or has meant to him. I mean, he couldn't even fathom that, this human meant that much to him. And you see that he essentially just kind of gets crushed under all of that. And then beyond that, another moment that felt like a second dagger to Poof, again, looking at it from Poof's perspective, is the king deciding to not punish Welfin, and also deciding not to punish Poof himself, right? Being lenient, being merciful, being empathetic, letting things go, forgiving. Because Welfin has quite a grandstand finale, right? As he proclaims, you'll never be king, or I'll never call you king. There's only one king for me. It's Gyro. The king overlooks it. Poof must have thought in that moment, okay, maybe I'll get one last thing. Maybe the king is going to punish him for that, because that is essentially quite a bit over the line, right? Old Meruem, King Meruem, or just the king, the Chimera and king, would have easily decapitated him, within a split second. But Meruem, no, he sees no reason for any of that. And like I said, I felt that, by the end of that episode, he must have respected that. The courage it took for someone like Walfen to step up in that manner, right? Stand up for the thing he believes in, right? The person he believes in. He can understand, right? Because he's got Komugi, his own special person. And yeah, ultimately Poof had to watch his king embrace a humanity within him, right? All that compassion and that empathy. It's a tough one for Poof. It really is. And listen, I'll speak for myself, but I felt quite a bit of sympathy for Poof as well. You guys know, I really, really like Poof. I've liked all three of them, right? Poof can be a little shit, and that makes him that much more captivating, I believe, right? But at the end of the day, I think there is room for sympathy for someone like Poof. And I think the king understands that. Meruem understood that, right? At one point, I think it's clear that Meruem felt that this is punishment enough, right? Because again, they're linked. He can feel just how devastated Poof is in that moment. His reality is shattered completely in these final moments. I'd be shocked if Poof doesn't die in the next episode at some point, right? Because of, again, the poison that's just, within him at this point. That's taking over, He's bleeding quite a bit, coughing up quite a bit throughout this episode. But, by the end of it, one of the things I really kept thinking about is just look at Meruem now, right? You look at his first appearance and the subsequent episodes that followed, how ruthless and cold he was, right? Again, that's just within his nature. He's meant to be born like that. And then you see him throughout this episode. And by the end of this episode, you see that he's essentially become the best, most rounded, version of himself, right? Enlightened version of himself, I'd say. And the capacity for that, it's always been there, right? It just kind of had to be tapped into. He needed some of those special meetings. And then, of course, there is a clear contrast with Gon, who actually ends up going in the opposite direction, right? It's clearly quite deliberate, of course. God damn it, I spoke of lasting images. I spoke of that in episode 131. So this is the lasting image of Gon, at least up until that point, until now, episode 134. So again, it remains to be seen how they'll address that, So I'm still kind of holding off a bit on, completely kind of, going in on Gon's arc. It remains to be seen, right? And yeah, again, I kind of have to just see out the next few episodes, I suppose. I'd say at most there's probably a couple of episodes left for this arc at this point. Everything is really, truly wrapped up, right? Because like I said, I do expect Poof to be gone imminently, right? And then the next on the chopping block, it's got to be the king, right? Palm kind of predicted or estimated that he's only got a few hours left. So it's getting to that. It must be getting to that, or maybe not, but it is going to get to that. That's the point, right? It's set in stone. But yeah, speaking of Palm, and going back to one of my points from the last episode, yeah, it makes even more sense now that she does understand, that the miniature rose has been used, and that's why she gave the estimate of a few hours, because she understands the connotations of the miniature rose being used, right, and the really distinct aftermath of it, the poison itself, the poison of the rose. Isn't it crazy? I think a couple of episodes ago, or maybe even in the last episode, I spoke of how human DNA being introduced into the gene pool of the Chimera ants is kind of like a poison that actually kind of spread within them. Look at this, this literal poison now that's within these, last few Chimera ants that are exposed to it, at least. And of course, it's a man-made poison at that. Of course it is. And yeah, according to the narrator, it's essentially, it's far more sinister, isn't it? Even than the explosion itself, right? That this specifically engineered toxin, the poison within the rose, you're better off just dying in the initial explosion, because if that doesn't get you, you're going to have a painful final few moments of your life, final few hours of your life. And, it really kind of feels like it could be decades before any, area is exposed to this toxin, post-explosion, that is, it could be decades before it's habitable again, right? So yeah, it's, you see, Tagashi certainly, wanted to make that point clear. And listen, maybe you could argue that it gets a little bit preachy, especially because, I've had the exact same thing in episodes 126 and specifically episode 127, the opening of that, right? Like I said, certainly quite a frank and scathing assessment of human nature and the atrocities humanity is capable of, right? But, let's not forget that it also had this bit of exposition in there, crucial exposition. And, I'm not saying, Tagashi's saying anything wrong here. Preaching in the sense that, maybe it's already been established, right? But yeah, nothing wrong about the message that's being driven home here, right? And then some. A bleak picture of the dark side of humanity, right? The darkest side of the infinite potential that Netero alluded to, right? The horrors of humanity, the inequality of humanity. And listen, you guys know I've been talking about this since day one, essentially. Essentially the official, I suppose, first episode of the Chimera Ant arc, right? And then maybe the first few as well. This idea of humans or humanity, human DNA being introduced into the Chimera Ants. I had a lot of really interesting discussions back then, right in the beginning stages of this, right? And all this time later, all of that stuff is really still quite relevant. But, to go back and finish up my point about the contrasts between, the trajectory of Meruem and Gon, you see that the emotional intelligence of the king has developed exponentially, right? But then, unfortunately, on the opposite end of that, you see Gon. He's just been isolated in these final moments leading up to all of that, right? The emotional intelligence just hasn't been there. The opportunities haven't been there, essentially, for it to grow. And he tried to handle a lot of this just by himself, and it's essentially far too much for someone of his age, of his experience, right? It broke his mind, and his mind, in an attempt to protect itself, just latched onto that idea, right? And then I know how that played out. Episode 131. But before I move on to any next point, let me kind of praise the episode as a whole from a technical standpoint, from the production standpoint. One of the standouts yet again, right? And I've seen some masterful stuff in this arc, right, from a production standpoint. But this right here, my goodness, the art direction is one of the standouts for sure. Incredible stuff. The dialogue, my God, the script is so tight. It's incredible, the directing choices, the editing choices, the music selection, the staging, the blocking, right? The conflict between the three of them, the tension, the contrast between the motives, right? Be it the search for the truth for King Meruem, right? And that playing a part both in Welfin's approach under pressure, under immense pressure, and FILMBuFF's approach and his actions. That he does kind of decide to step over the line, right? He has to make that choice to stop any further questioning of Welfin. And then of course the last one being just this idea of living. I want to live, as Welfin put it, right? So you have the three motives. You've got this incredible blocking. It's usually not a term you'd use with animation, but you see it. The storyboarding rather. You see it. It's just so airtight, so exceptional. It's phenomenal stuff, man. It really is. So yeah, the three-hander, the three Chimera Ants, right? Sure, like I said, they've got the human nature aspect within them, but I just feel like this is such a fitting conclusion to this arc, right? Right in the business end of it, these are the people that are a part of this. Right, and in the last episode, it's people like Palm and Kalgo, as well. More Chimera Ants, yes, hybrid. Palm has 1 foot in each door essentially, and that still might be something crucial in the upcoming episodes, right? Welfin certainly played his part, right? I never could have expected his part in all of this to be this big, but I expected something, right, from him still being around. But at the end of the day, it's perfect that it came through him. I think someone like him, rather. I mean, some of the artistic choices made throughout this episode are brilliant, aren't they? You think of that depiction of, Welfin's headspace. It so effectively took us right into it, drags us right into his headspace. And, you see how he's thinking about all of this. He's not sure about any of it. Or, he's got equal amounts of, I don't know, doubt about a lot of it. You see even the depiction of Ikalgo is a bit of a sinister one, right? And of course, so is Meruem's depiction, and then, Pito and Yuppie, and then Poof as well. But Poof's is all about being isolated, and his secret and all of that. He's being stretched in all directions. And as I am on that topic, putting us in headspaces and all of that, going back to that idea of Poof finally really truly understanding, just how much this person means to his king, it simply had to be something like this, right? So there's a really clever chain of events in Togashi's writing here, right? To have them come together after Meruem's rebirth as one, joined, right? Their thoughts and emotions, more so than that, at this point, Meruem is actively able to just kind of, reach in and extract anything he really needs from you, right? But yet he still poses the questions because he wants to see, right? He wants a sincere answer. He knows the answer, but he wants to see how the person is going to respond. But it had to be something like this. It simply had to be an experience like this. Otherwise, Poof is he's never going to understand. He was never going to understand, right? It needed something of this magnitude, and the writing choices that led up to this, yeah, good stuff, man. Beautiful stuff by Togashi. The writing choices that allowed this, right, since the rebirth of the king, right? And then, of course, so much of both Yuppie and Poof becoming a part of the king, and all of them becoming one. But yeah, I just think there's immense beauty present within this episode. Right? There's a sense of fulfillment, a sense of enlightenment, right? There's regret, there's tragedy, there's rage, all of that. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, the sights and sounds of some of these all-timer episodes. This is one of them, the sights and sounds of this episode. The sights specifically, the visual storytelling, the visual element of this is incredible. There's some incredible imagery on display here, right? The art style switch-ups, once again, the fidelity is clear to see, how much time and effort's been put into this, and time that's been allocated to this. Studio Madhouse, I believe, right? I believe I've read that a few times now in the comments. There's a few specific frames that are just incredible, right? I'm thinking of, Welfin getting blasted, or kind of understanding that he's about to die, he's going to be eaten, right? Poor guy, even in this life, in, a different reincarnation, kind of, he's about to be subjected, or he thought he's about to be subjected to the same brutal death, right, as Zykel, and now as, Welfin, the Chimera Ant, that frame of him, right? The art style switch up there as he understands, and it almost kind of looks like his face is getting ripped apart. And then, of course, I see the almost immediate effects it had on him, right? Again, some of the imagery from his headspace, right? As he's being pushed to his limits, that primal fear. And again, the images that it induces within someone's mind, right? Even someone like Ikalgo is essentially, depicted as someone that could be a saboteur. I'm thinking of that wide shot of Komugi and Meruem in the field. There's a tree to the left and them just centered in the frame. And it's this beautiful, lush land as far as the eye can see, right? There's a lot of really interesting imagery of Poof, right? Earlier on, he said, everything about the king is perfect. But even there, you see right there the king being surrounded by those roses, right? And this is around the time Poof goes, the king is invincible. Yeah. It's really clear to see there, right? The point of that frame. You see the thorns of the roses, and the black roses at that, right? The unease that Poof is feeling within his heart, right? That unease is literal as well, my guy. There's that moment in the opening montage, right? The crosses. It took me a split second, but there's people on those crosses. You saw my reaction as I clocked it. I didn't see it at first, but then, as I kept looking, I'm like, oh. And to go back to an image I mentioned earlier, Meruem and that massive skull behind him, and it's kind of smoking, right? So I kind of linked that to a similar image of the late chairman Netero, right? Back in episode 126. Yeah, here, there's a bit of there's another meaning to it, right? I feel like it's also kind of showcasing or depicting his own imminent death, the poison, that's, within his system at this point. But yeah, one of the things I enjoy most and appreciate most is, this depiction of true character under pressure, true pressure. Again, pressure situations that mean something for the story, for the character arcs. The types of situations that do have proper, major consequences. That right there is a true pressure situation, right? One that matters. And those are the types of situations that a lot of writers use to depict, to showcase true nature, true character. And I saw that on all fronts. You look at someone like Poof, true to his character, right till the end. Right till the end. And then, of course, you've got Welfin, right? That's as impressive as it gets. Him being able to pull that off under pressure and digging deep because he wants to live, because he wants to go see Gyro. He wants to see him once again, right? It kept him in the game. So, in a sense, he'll realize later that, he is thankful that Ikalgo reminded him of Gyro, right? I love that moment of his past memories, Zykal's past memories just rushing in and mixing in, right? That concept of your life flashing, before your eyes and all of that. And they've touched up on that idea, a similar idea in this arc as well, right? Going all the way back to the Dragon Dive episode even. But you could actually even look at Welfin as the potential character that meets or that fills that description I got all that time ago, right? During a Gungi match. The spy has done nothing this entire match, but suddenly it controls the board. I mean, it kind of checks out, man. His actions, the one word that he's able to so impressively reach, right, and speak, it's one of the most, it is one of the most important character moments of this entire arc. It is, and you see how thankful Meruem is to Welfin, even if Welfin has some choice words for him by the end of it, right, before departing. But yeah, let's see, next steps, immediate steps in the next episode. The king is going to head down to the basement, right? He's seen the footsteps as showcased through his end. Let's see, man. I mean, I brought up that idea of him maybe not wanting to put Komugi in danger, right? So I don't know. I'm not even sure how things might play out for Palm and Ikalgo if they come across the king. They'll be exposed to the king as well, right? So yeah, there, like I said, there's two options here. Heartbreaking option and bit of a romantic one, even though that could also prove to be heartbreaking. A reunion, or the king deciding that he's not going to put Komugi at risk, right? Or another option I didn't think of up until now. If Komugi finds out and she makes the choice to be around the king, in all of this, I simply forgot about Komugi and her attachment to the king, to the supreme leader rather, and everything that's meant to her, right? This means so much to Komugi as well, so let's not forget that aspect of it. So yeah, I kind of forgot about Komugi's perspective for a second there, but yeah, her getting to see the supreme leader again, that could be a big moment, right? So yeah, this reunion, man, I'm hoping it happens. Like I said, the romantic in me hopes it happens. They get to play Gungi. He gets to tell Komugi his name. That's just how I've kind of thought of it for a few episodes now in my mind, right? But again, it's not about to be smooth sailing, is it? Given all the information I have now about the miniature rose and the poison within. And just a few hours left, according to Palm. But yeah, to end off my points about Poof in this episode, he simply had to and has come to terms with the reality of the capacity to change within his own king, the Chimera and king, Meruem. All of his ideals, his goals, his motives crushed before his eyes, understanding that he never had a chance, right? Yeah, it's quite a crushing blow for Poof. It really truly is. And like I said, the king understood that that's punishment enough. That's punishment enough. But yeah, I think that should do it for this one, folks. I hope you find him. And if possible, I hope you can live as a human. My God. Listen, I expected Meruem to go through quite a character arc, right? It's all there, you know. I've kind of shared my thoughts right since the beginning. You could just tell it's going to be that type of character, but it's just something else entirely to actually see it play out in this manner, to see it, right? I mean, you see how it affected Poof, you know, his final breakdown as he hears that. But yeah, it's incredible stuff, man. Incredible episode. Really, really enjoyed that, and I'm feeling sad now. Really quite sad, you know, that it is kind of reaching its conclusion at this point. Again, I'm not sure how many more episodes. I think at most I've probably got a couple at most. But yeah, you know, once I know for sure the arc is ending, I'm sure I'll have quite a bit to say as a whole about the arc. But yeah, if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access or timer-based full length or also full opacity, consider checking out the Patreon page and potentially supporting the channel as well. There's links in the description and also links for social media. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.